What is good, folks? Hope you guys are all doing well. Today we are talking about something a little bit of some interesting points about coffee. I think coffee has become just such a normal thing in our society today. People drink coffee every single day. Some people say, don't talk to me without drinking coffee. So things are getting a little wild. But that being said, we think that there are a couple misconceptions, misunderstandings, and myths that we've all grown to believe over time about coffee. And today we'll be covering 4 myths that we believe about coffee that are actually not true. Let's roll into it, folks.
All right, so first thing we have is light roast coffee has more caffeine than dark roast coffee. Is that really true though?
Yes.
No? Yes?
Yeah. No, of course not. There's no difference between the two. Actually, I was just reading up an article right before shooting this video, just because I also don't want to mislead you guys. But they said that you have to roast coffee at up to about 600 degrees in the roaster before you can actually notice a big difference in caffeine, which is pretty nuts. How dark would that be?
You're talking about French Vienna dinosaur roast? I don't know.
I don't even think there's a name for it. That's at a danger level. That's like that's fire hazard in the roaster. That's how black it is. So that being said, there really is not a big difference in roast level. Light roast, medium roast are all gonna have about the same caffeine content as well as dark roast. So but that being said, dark roast has a much more of a, people say, stronger taste.
Yeah.
Break that down.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times people affiliate with the strength of the coffee with caffeine levels. And because dark roast tends to come off like this heavier, more body, kind of burnt flavor, it's all automatically affiliated with, oh my gosh, it's a strong cup of coffee. Give me that liquid tar, kind of thing. Yeah. And but that is a misconception. It's like, just because you're tasting a little more bitterness in your cup doesn't mean your caffeine levels are up.
Right. And actually, that being said, like, strength is actually more determined on how you brew it, how your extraction goes, and your water to coffee ratio will also add to the strength. But yeah, it's oftentimes just like a very dark burnt coffee that gives that strong taste, kind of like if you left a bagel in the toaster for about 2 rounds. When the first round didn't go well, you just put that back in there, and then you forget, and the alarm is going off, and nobody likes a burnt bagel.
No, but you can save it, scrape some off.
That's true. That's a rule of thumb. Like, you burnt your bagels, just grab a knife that'll scrape it off, and now you got a medium roast all over again.
But those aromas of burnt bagel.
Oh, dude, yeah,
no good.
Yeah, no good.
Woo.
Anyways, so we got our coffee roasted. It's in the house. What's the next misconception?
People tend to do this. I don't know about you folks, but I remember some of the older generation firsthand taught me, like, man, to preserve the freshness of your coffee, toss it in the freezer, right? Do you guys remember like those Folger cans in the freezer? I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely walked into houses and they had the Folger can in the freezer to preserve the freshness. Does that work?
Yes and no. Yes and no. The concept is right, but at the same time, I think it needs to be done right for it to actually preserve the quality of the coffee and the taste of the coffee. So what's the wrong way to do it and what's the right way to do it?
Yeah. A lot of the times, the biggest mistake is putting ground coffee in the freezer. That's never a go. But you can preserve a little bit of freshness by putting whole bean coffee in your freezer. It just has to be airtight, like absolutely has to be. The best way to do that is to use like one of those freezer bags, or that you can suck out the air out of. You put it in the freezer and you just leave it in there. For example, you got some, high-end coffee and you want it to last longer, because you had an abundance of it. You can store it there for 2 to 3 months. It'll be fine. But the main thing is, don't take it out of the freezer, let it cool, and then put it back. Because what is happening there is condensation is building, and if there's a little bit of air in there, all of a sudden there's gonna be liquid, and there's gonna be a water content is gonna mess it up. It's actually gonna lower the quality of your coffee that's in the freezer.
Yeah, totally. Yes, that misconception is right to a certain extent, but it can also backfire and actually worsen your coffee pretty darn quickly if not done right. The next thing people will ask, hey, are the flavor notes on the coffee bag, are they infused flavors? Are they infused flavors? Now I think so. I mean, first off, I love this question because I'd say no. Coffee is a fruit, it's a cherry, and the coffee bean is the seed of a cherry. So it's gonna have very fruity aspects to it. We're talking about acidity, we're talking about fruitness, we're talking about, it's gonna have some rich flavors to it because it's a fruit. That being said, there is such a thing as flavored coffee.
You know it. Actually, I worked in a cafe that sold flavored coffee almost more than regular coffee. So there's a demographic for that. That's a whole different ball game. That's not flavor notes or hints of this flavor. That's literally you have caramel in your roasted coffee.
Yeah.
And people love that. I mean, not my cup of coffee, but people love that.
Yeah, totally. I think, I mean, I like how you just mentioned the flavor notes. It's hints. It's what flavor notes on a coffee bag are things that we as roasters or importing companies are saying, we think this coffee tastes like this naturally on its own, black in its most raw form. Flavored coffee, the artificial flavoring has a lot of oils, a lot of artificial chemicals added and coated on top of the bean, which is actually not good for your health, but it's also not good for your grinder because it's gonna mess up your grinder, leave a lot of residue. That's happened to my grinder before because somebody else in the house was using some dark roasted coffee, so I had to take that out and clean it out. So so the last but not least misconception is what?
Well, are we talking about brewing? Yes. So
yes, totally. I mean, you got to brew your coffee, and depending on how you make your coffee, this might not affect you that much. But there's a big misconception. There's a big misconception is that when you're making a pour over or any coffee, it's not good to pour right off of boil. People are saying, which for a long time I believed that too, until James Hoffman completely destroyed that argument for me. People were claiming that it scorched your coffee. It was bad to pour boiling water on top of coffee grounds. But is that true?
It isn't, because a lot of things are going on. One, you gotta understand that your kettle is made out of a material that holds on to heat. So as soon as you take it off of boiling, that container that your kettle is made out of is sucking heat into it. It's like the heat retention in the kettle. But then also from the edge of your spout, depending on what kind of kettle you're using, to the time it actually takes to hit the coffee bed or the slurry, it's actually losing heat as well because it's falling, through air, it's cooling. And then from there, as it's in the slurry, your brewer, your cone, depending on what material it is, ceramic, glass, plastic, it's also retaining and sucking heat and taking heat out of your slurry. So I don't know if I'm exactly correct, but it's roughly 10 degrees difference between what's coming out of your kettle to what's actually in your slurry. So there's a pretty big cool down.
For sure. And it's actually quite impossible to have straight off a boil 212 degree water on your grounds, interacting with your grounds. That being said, there is a difference between brewing coffee right off of boil and brewing off about maybe waiting like a minute for it to cool down. Give us like a quick, in a nutshell, the differences between those two.
Yeah, very simple. The hotter the water, the more extraction. So if you're boiling, pouring straight off of boil, depending on what the temperature it is that hits the slurry, it's gonna be hotter than if you, let's say, wait at 200, it's gonna lose some more temperature and it's not gonna extract as much. Basically, the hotter the water, it takes the soluble materials of the coffee and is able to break them down more so they go into your cup. So possibility of your strength of coffee going up and also the extraction going up.
Yeah, totally. And you can adjust that depending on the brew method. I know espresso isn't made right off a boil. I know AeroPress, my AeroPress method, your AeroPress method as well. We have like a 10-degree difference between our AeroPress methods or recipes. So depending on your method, you're gonna have to change up your temp because it's changing your extraction. But that being said, don't ever be afraid to go right off a boil, right on top of your coffee grounds. But I think those are one of the more major misconceptions that we run into when people are asking us questions and trying to figure out and learn about coffee. And yeah, we just thought, hey, this might be a good idea to share this with you, our wonderful viewers. So if you have not yet subscribed and you're just coming through, thanks for swinging by. Hit the subscribe button to stay tuned. We're going to be coming out with new, fresh content on a regular basis. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. Go grab your
brewer, brew up some good stuff. Use boiling water if you're using V60.
That's right. Go make yourself a cup of coffee, and we'll see you guys in the next one.